Hello, I'm Eileen McHugh with the BBC News. King Charles III and Queen Camilla have waved to crowds and watched a flypast from the balcony of Buckingham Palace in London following their coronation in Westminster Abbey. Earlier, the King and Queen were crowned in a ceremony full of pageantry and symbolism. Just over 2,000 invitees, including celebrities, faith leaders and heads of state from 90 countries, attended the service. Canada's High Commissioner to the UK, Ralph Goodale, was there, and he told the BBC he believed King Charles had a strong desire to make a difference to people's lives.
I think he is going to work very hard at being modern, being relevant to the times, and making a contribution, not just performing a function and filling a role and having a visible presence, but a presence that actually matters to people.
The police in London have defended a series of arrests they made throughout the day, saying they had received information that protesters planned to disrupt the coronation. 52 people were detained. Daniel Samford reports.
The anti-monarchy protests had been planned for months. The demonstrators based themselves at Trafalgar Square, about halfway along the procession route. But before they'd even started, some of the protest leaders were arrested. Human rights groups said the arrests set a dangerous precedent, coming on the back of new protest laws passed only this week. Among the hundreds of thousands in central London, this was a protest by a few hundred people. But to the annoyance of others, they made their voices heard, even as the king rode back to the palace.
The head of the UN's nuclear watchdog has voiced extreme concern over the Ukrainian nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia as Russian occupying forces begin evacuating residents from the area. Rafael Grossi said the town of Enerhodar, which is home to most of the plant's staff, was one of the areas affected. Bethany Bell reports.
Rafael Grossi said IAEA experts were monitoring the situation for any potential impact on nuclear safety and security. Operating staff remain at the plant, Mr. Grossi said. But he expressed deep concern about the increasingly tense and challenging conditions for personnel and their families. He said the situation around the nuclear plant was becoming increasingly unpredictable and potentially dangerous. He called for immediate action to prevent the threat of a severe nuclear accident.
The Foreign Ministry in Moscow has blamed Ukraine and its Western allies for a car bomb that wounded a prominent Russian writer. The Kremlin singled out the United States for failing to condemn the attack on Zakhar Prilepin, who's a vocal pro-war blogger. Officials say he has undergone surgery after the blast. His driver was killed. This is the World News from the BBC. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister says envoys from Sudan's warring military factions are in Jeddah for talks. The US-Saudi initiative is meant to see the first face-to-face meeting between representatives of the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. Fighting has continued in parts of the capital Khartoum despite several ceasefires. Our Africa regional editor Will Ross reports.
We're told that the envoys are in Jeddah, but so far there's been no word on whether any meetings have been held. We don't even know who the representatives are. People across Sudan will be desperate for some good news from what are supposed to be the first face-to-face discussions. Whilst the army and the rapid support forces have said they're willing to take part, both have avoided any talk of a possible end to the war. In a sign of just how volatile the capital Khartoum is, Turkey says it's moving its embassy to Port Sudan after shots were fired at the ambassador's car.
Iraq's Prime Minister has blamed climate change for droughts that are causing dire water shortages across the country. Mohammed Shia al-Sudani used an address at a global conference in Baghdad to ask for urgent international help. He called on Turkey to let more river water flow downstream towards Iraq. Mr al-Sudani described the problem as his government's top priority. The number of people known to have died during floods and landslides in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo has risen to 203. Heavy rainfall on Thursday caused rivers to overflow. Landslides destroyed homes in 2 villages. 2 days earlier, in neighbouring Rwanda, floods killed more than 130 people. The government of Guatemala has said around 1,200 people who had been evacuated from towns near the Fuego volcano have now been allowed to return home. They were ordered to leave the area on Thursday when the volcano began erupting, sending a cloud of ash up in the sky. The emergency services said no one had been injured. BBC News.